Hi, welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 126.
I'm Cam and this is Julie. This week's Torah portion, we're finally at the end of
What? Genesis,
yeah. So we are going from 47, I think it's 28, to the end of chapter 50. So Julie and I were discussing something that Rabbi Foreman on Aleph Beit had spoken of. Right. He was talking about who is Joseph's father. Now, granted, we know that Jacob is his father, but we also know that Pharaoh came in and stepped in as kind of an adoptive father. Remember, he was 17 years with Jacob, but 22 years, well, no, not really. 22 years in Egypt, but not really with Pharaoh.
Right.
Yeah, but anyway, he's still with Pharaoh for, 9 years? Yeah, 9 years under Pharaoh. And look, being treated like royalty. Oh,
right.
Every pun intended. So now what Rabbi Foreman was talking about was here where Joseph has to swear to his father, Jacob, that he will bury him, meaning siding with his biological father over his adoptive father.
Right. And the reason that was a big deal was because Joseph was seen as almost a pharaoh.
Right.
So to have his real father not buried as an Egyptian was kind of a saying, no, this is where my true allegiance lies.
Right. And as we talked about this last year or the year before, I don't remember which, that, the territorial aspect of the gods and the kings.
Yes.
Jacob is a king, per se,
of the
nation that's going to be in Canaan, where his God is. So it makes sense that that's where he needs to be.
Right.
But the part that Rabbi Foreman talked about that we were so mesmerized with was he speaks of in chapter 50, verse 10, where this Egyptian perception is bringing the children of Jacob are bringing him in, and it makes the comment. Now, a lot of this is midrashing, obviously, that Joseph's crown is on the coffin, or the coffin of Jacob, and that when they come against him. The nations come against him, that when they see this crown, that they take their crowns off and present it. Oh, go ahead. You want to read it?
Yeah. And 10, and they came to the threshing floor of Atad. And that threshing floor is the threshing of thorn bushes.
Yes.
In the Hebrew.
And so, I said threshold, which kind of is, they're right there, the threshold of the threshing floor. So here it is of the thorn bushes. So Rabbi Foreman, who does not understand Messiah or Yeshua as Messiah, says that as they present, the nations are presenting their crowns to Jacob, that because of the way the wording is, it's like putting a crown of thorns on Jacob.
Yeah.
As king. Hello. I mean, thorns, hello. Where else do we see that?
Yeshua.
Yes. So we just thought that was so fascinating that, again, you're seeing these little hints being dropped in. Being dropped in for us to pick up now to go, oh my gosh, even in Jacob, the one who is Israel, the father of Israel, is being recognized. But look at what their crown is made of. Even in this story.
Right. And what I love about that is it's a crown of thorns. That's a midrash that was all the way back when.
Oh, yeah.
So when Yeshua had it, they'd have been like, oh, it's like Jacob when he's coming in. And here we have 2,000 years later, Rabbi Foreman is bringing that midrash back to life. Yes. It's probably been buried, not even to be thought of.
Who reads it? Just maybe a few people read it. And
but
now for us to see
he's bringing it back to life because it's time.
Right.
It's time to see, wait a minute, I've seen that story before. You can't get away, especially, in a couple of months when we're going to be doing Passover, around the Christian Easter. You can't get away from the imagery of the crown of thorns. And here we are, bringing that midrash back to life. And they're going to see it.
And what a thought that as the nations bring their crowns, it becomes thorns. Which isn't that what happened? Isn't that how he was first crowned king by the nations? Literally with thorns.
Yeah, and
but that second one, it's not going to be.
And it's become the Christian symbol.
Right.
Him with the thorns.
Right.
I don't know. I just think that the Lord is going to use even what we've perverted, even what we've, we think, oh, that's just bad, it's bad. But he's going to use that. You see it all through the Joseph story. Joseph has been resurrected, so to speak,
right.
to this Pharaoh, this false god, but yet he uses it to save Israel.
Right.
It's going to be the same pattern. He's going to use what may not be the ideal situation, but it's going to be used to save his people.
Right.
Because all things work together for the good.
And then the other aspect that Rabbi Foreman brings up is because Joseph himself is displaced, or not displaced,
Displaced.
But, yeah. He's been kicked out as a son.
Displaced son.
And so, obviously, Canaan, and so was Esau, which were the two major groups coming against him.
Right.
The Midrash is when they saw that Joseph, who had been in their same situation, was now loving his father and working hard to get back with his brothers, that was another part of them going, okay, it can happen. We can have peace. Yeah, it humbled them. Anyway, it was just really neat. Aleph Beit, we highly recommend it. Yes. He is not a messianic believer. However, it doesn't matter. The Torah is truth and light regardless.
Yes.
It points.
The Lord is working mightily through him.
Yes, and I mean,
we're all partly blinded, right?
Right. I'll say his light still completely shines through his work. It's amazing. Moving on to new points. There was one, we talked about how in 48, Joseph takes his two sons, right, and goes before his father, and then probably something, we don't know if time has passed or what, and then 49 happens. Right. But the more I read it this week, I started thinking, they are called, Joseph and his kid. Joseph's called and he brings his boys up because he's dying. So there's probably not days in there.
Right.
I started thinking, isn't this interesting? It really does mimic the Isaac giving the blessing to Jacob.
Yeah.
Like we said before, his sight is dimmed. Mm-hmm. But here we have Jacob who's like, no, I know who's supposed to get the blessing. I have no problem with it. I'm going to do it. Because remember, every Isaac and Jacob and now these two boys, there has always been the younger being blessed over the older.
Right.
Even Abraham is not the oldest. He's the younger of the brothers. So we, again, have this pattern. You notice it's not every younger. The blessing is to the older. However, at times, the Lord handpicks those from the younger to replace.
Right.
I say that because Messiah is both. He's the second Adam. He's the second Israel. So he's the younger. However, he is the firstborn of the physical. So he's also the older. I just love how he can be all these things.
He is all these things.
I know. Yes. He literally, the volume of this book is written about him.
You know what I loved about that? About one thing I saw this year, going on with the patterns of what it's going to be like for us, Joseph being the Messiah, Ephraim and Manasseh representing the nations, fullness of the Gentiles, like he talks about. He presents those two before his father, before the other brothers are presented.
Yes, that's what I was saying. When you start to look at, wait, all this is probably happening at the same time. He privately brings them in and does this blessing. Then he's like, okay, then he calls all his sons in. I thought, wait a minute. Isn't it the same? Even Joseph did that. He brought Benjamin near, he had Judah come near, and then once out, then all the others. Right. It's the same, bringing the one and then going out.
It just makes me wonder if it could be foreshadowing at the beginning of the millennium and then the millennial period. Because when he blesses the rest of them, he says, let me tell you what's going to befall you in the latter days.
Right.
To whereas with Ephraim and Manasseh, it's the fullness of the Gentiles.
Yes.
That's pretty much the blessing. It's like,
you're just for the whole world. They can all come in with you. Right.
Right. So here we're all being brought in these last 2,000 years. And then you're going to have this big blessing because Joseph is included, which by default, Ephraim and Manasseh are included in that final blessing.
Which I loved in 48:15, it says, and he blessed Joseph, and said, now this is the blessing for Joseph, and says, the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, and the God who has fed me all my life long to this day, the messenger, and it's funny because in the Targum, it said, I didn't say it right, the Targum. It says the word.
The word.
So it says,
what's messenger?
The word, the word who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the youths. So while this is considered a blessing to Joseph, it's all going to his sons.
Yes.
I was like, God, so many foreshadow. Example, the blessing of Yeshua is blessing the father.
Right.
He still receives that blessing.
Right.
Just like Abraham, when we bless Israel, it's like a blessing unto Abraham, which is like a blessing unto the father.
Right.
And when I just love when I saw he blessed Joseph, and here's how he does it. Now, if we look in chapter 49, we see again in verse 22, Joseph, here's a blessing for Joseph again. So here he's actually getting a double blessing. Because he had it through Ephraim and Manasseh. Now he has it through all of his others that are going to come.
Just like Yeshua.
I know.
I mean, you've got the church and you've got Israel. Okay, it's all Israel. But you've got the southern kingdom, Judah.
Right.
The one he's dealing with. And you've got the church. Yeah.
Right. So you have the one with the living Torah and the one with the written Torah.
Yeah.
And those are the two that have to come together, but each are blessed. I think that's one thing where in the church history, we've not even understood that Israel's blessed. Like, oh, he's cursed. No. They're blessed. They've done all the things that have put us in the position that we can now come to see.
That's right.
And if it wasn't for them keeping those oracles, we wouldn't have anything to go back to return to our family for all of it to come together, which is what's going to allow Messiah to return.
Right.
Brothers, get along.
That's right.
Because once you become whole, I'm there. Once that body starts to function like it's supposed to,
that's right,
then the head can properly sit and rule.
Yes.
So anyway, on that rule part, let's look a little bit more in 49 about the blessing that's to Joseph. It says, Joseph is an offshoot of a fruitful bearing tree. An offshoot of a fruitful bearing tree.
Yeah.
Every time things are repeated, right? It's a done deal. This is like saying, it's not a mate. This is it. Right. This double portion. I'm like, well, yeah, it's double portion. We had that. We had that. Anyway, you just see all the doubles.
And I love it because you have to be a fruit-bearing tree.
Right.
To be included in this.
Oh, yes.
You know, you're not born into it. You're not, you don't say a certain prayer that gets you into it and then that's it. You have to bear fruit.
Yeah.
Just like Yeshua says. If you don't bear fruit,
you're useless.
Right.
In that role.
That's right.
So let's keep going. In the next verse, it says, and the archers have bitterly, and let's go to the next verse. And the archers have bitterly grieved him, shot him, and hated him. Okay, hello. That's what happened to Yeshua.
That's right.
Joseph, right? It says in 24, but his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hand were made strong by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there, the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Now, you notice it says the mighty one of Jacob, not Israel.
Right.
Because there's a fleshly aspect, which is Messiah is born
in the flesh,
into the flesh, into the family, just like Joseph was. He was 100% Hebrew. He was the son of Jacob.
Right.
Yet when Jacob's spiritual aspect of Israel, that is also what was then given to him, or I should say he continued on in that vein, because that's where we then see at the bottom, the stone of Israel. He's the rock, the foundation.
Yeah.
Hello, isn't that Messiah?
Yes.
We have that working there. And I love the fact that it says from there is the shepherd.
Yeah.
You have verses that just help support this and point to it. We have Zechariah 7. We have Matthew 21:39, Isaiah 28:16. All these are hinting to where he's the shepherd, and then how they're just people dispersed, but we're waiting for that one shepherd. How there's the stone that was rejected, but we're waiting for that cornerstone, and all the things that bring us back to this. But we have to remember, this is the aspect, the stone of Israel, the spiritual aspect, because the physical aspect 100% goes to Judah, and we see that in the blessing. In 49:5, where it's going through all about how he's going to rule on the earthly.
Right.
And with Messiah, he does have a role. He had a role here. He has a role in the heavenly. He's going to come back. He's going to have a role here again.
Yeah.
But again, that's where we see he's very fluid. all these examples show aspects of him. That's why it's the elephant idea. You know,
Right,
you got an ear, you got a tail, you got a toenail. You know,
put it all together, you have an elephant.
Exactly, but we just can't see that yet.
Right.
With this short portion, obviously we've covered in the last 2 years a lot of things. This year, there's so much still in there, but it's just been a hectic week. So really, that's all the little nuggets I wanted to discuss today. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Just a little. I see in chapter 50, again, after Jacob is gone, you see the brothers again coming to Joseph and saying, we were really wrong. I mean, it was really bad. And we were really sorry. And now it's like it has nothing to do with his father. Whereas before it was like, almost like we've just wronged our father.
Yeah. Oh,
and you were the one involved in it. But now it's like, okay, the father's gone, and we really are sorry what we did to you. Kind of bringing it all back, to a close.
Yeah.
Bringing it to a close.
You had the first dream, the brothers came and
bowed.
Then dad came, and now
it's almost going the other way. And now we're getting back to where we're all together again, but as one unit with no pride, no animosity, no jealousy. None of those things. We're all in different positions. And I just can't help but see that this will be the ending.
Yeah. Right.
There may be some, we have sinned against Yahweh. We've sinned against the Father. We've sinned against the Father. But really, in the very end, it's going to be, we sinned against you.
Right. Our brother.
Right.
Who came as a representative of our Father.
And they will see the Messiah more as a brother instead of just an untouchable Pharaoh, a god. They'll see him more as the brother and that personal, we did this to you.
And when we remember, they didn't live. I mean, Joseph stayed down where Pharaoh was, and the brothers stayed up in Goshen.
Yeah.
So they weren't all hanging out. I have no idea, but wouldn't it have been interesting if after the father was gone, you have even more interaction? The reason why I say that is because where they suggest Joseph's tomb is actually in this, Goshen. Is up in the Goshen area. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, it may be that he actually went on and resided with his brothers full time.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah. And on the peace thing, I'll just throw this in. I know I didn't have anything else to say, but we see that peace with Ephraim and Manasseh when it's turned over to Ephraim as receiving the blessing, yet the second, Manasseh told you're going to receive it also.
Right.
Just like Esau and just like Ishmael had received, they still were strong nations.
Right.
There's no quarreling with them. So on just kind of jumping on to what Julie said about here, the brothers are finally getting back on their own, not because of the father, but because of their relationship with him. Mm-hmm. That in that we see a great pattern between the two brothers, Ephraim and Manasseh, of no quarreling. There's never stated that they quarrel or that they fight over this. They both understood their role and accepted it.
Right.
Which I would say that seems to be the nature of them, because Manasseh, when they go into the land, half of Manasseh stays outside.
Right.
They're told by Moses to have to stay out. Mm-hmm. And half are allowed to go in. Right. And they peacefully said yes. So look at that quality that's in Manasseh of being able to say, I understand my role and I accept it.
Right. And again, I would like to reiterate, I think I mentioned this last week, I was praying about this, what is our role in all of this? If this is a foreshadow of the end and we're truly living in the end, what is our role? And there's 3 different players in Joseph's house. If Joseph is Yeshua, you've got Ephraim, Manasseh, and the wife.
Right.
You don't hear a lot about the wife. No. Right? But she has such an important role, to nurture Ephraim and Manasseh. So if we are so privileged to be the wife, then that's our role, is to nurture and teach Ephraim and Manasseh the ways of our husband, who would be Yeshua.
Right.
So it's not our job to beat Ephraim and Manasseh into submission. It's our job to lovingly show them the ways of Joseph or the ways of Yeshua.
Right.
And I think that spoke to me more than anything else this year, because a lot of times we get on our high horse and we just think we're so much better than someone who hasn't been shown
right.
Yet
we were there.
Right.
Being there is what got us here.
Right.
Those are all stepping stones. Right. Fabulous.
I just think of it as a ship that gets off course. Yeah. You know, if it's going to get back on course, you're going to need people stationed at every post to get it back on the correct path.
And each of those people are in the place they're supposed to be in.
Right. So we don't need to look at someone else like Martha and Mary and say, well, she's not doing this and they're not doing this and they don't have this together. We need to say, you know what, Lord, you know what you're doing. I'm just going to be responsible for the information you gave me.
Right.
And that's it. And leave it at that.
Live it. Just live it.
Right.
And the rest will.
Right. That's what she did. She left the sun god house of Onan. She went into the house of Joseph. Yeah. She lived it. But you see that in Ephraim and Manasseh. And Jacob taught them. Right. Well, isn't that where we're at? Left the sun god, temple. Yeah. And now we need to be nurtured and reared up. And Jacob is going to teach us.
Right. You have the father-son working there, and you have the father-son working now.
But you have the wife who's nurturing and showing and living it. That's our job.
Yeah. I love that. Was such a great epiphany when you had that.
Yeah. I love it.
Anyway, that pretty much sums up the week. We are obviously inside because it's gloomy and cold and windy outside. And, well, we love you guys. So we're just doing the inside.
Yes.
That way we can keep it going.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week with 127. Yeah. And we hope you have a fantastic week. Shalom.